From a little cover, I got my dreams in sight. Wrestling on the mat, I go and put up a fight. With every hold and slam, I rise to the peak. Now as Professor Bear, it's my strength that they see. Roaring with knowledge like a lion so proud. In this wrestling world, I'm standing out loud. I'm Professor Bear, got the passion to spare. Wrestling's my life, with the power to share. From the roots to ropes, in the spotlight we gleam. Chasing victory dreams, living out the theme. Now my WOSN, my squad.
Yeah. Hey, new beginnings on the cusp. Not too old to adjust. Old dog, new tricks. Remember, I was just a pup. Something dirty in my cup. Clean soul.
With my forest crew, we'll always ride. In the wrestling world, one just claim the prize.
Welcome, 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 and thank you for joining me this afternoon. I am Professor Burr, and this is A Burr's Thought. And guys, girls, we are moving along on our wrestling promotion appreciation month. And I am so very blessed and humbled to be bringing you wrestling from overseas. Yes, this is something amazing. I guess today they are from New Zealand. You heard me right, New Zealand. And what's going to be an amazing chat and just to learn about wrestling from New Zealand, I have my friend Jay, and he represents the Capital Pro Wrestling. Jay, how are you doing today, sir?
I am absolutely fantastic. Yeah. And honored myself to be here on your podcast. So.
I thank you. Before we get started, I definitely want to let everybody know, if you look in the right-hand corner, you see their logo. I do this so there are so many different companies that have similar or the same name. I want you to know when you go look them up or research them or go to watch their stuff, you have the right promotion. And in the left-hand corner is a QR code. This is to their YouTube page, so you can go and enjoy their style of wrestling. Now, with that being said, Jay, how did you get started being a wrestling fan?
Being a wrestling fan, you've got to go back in time to the dinosaur age of 1988. And I walked into my cousin's bedroom, and I was 11 at the time, and he was watching SummerSlam '88, and I'm sitting there looking at this. Who's this Elvis-looking fella standing in the middle of the ring? Yeah, and what is this on TV? You know, just next minute the old Ultimate Warrior comes running out, and as everybody knows, because no doubt people have seen the match, it didn't last very long. It was pretty exciting. It was this neon-colored guy with tassels, long hair, huge muscles everywhere, come running down, absolutely destroyed this fella and won a belt. And I was like, hey, this is cool. So sort of pretty much from then, I fell down the rabbit hole that is professional wrestling.
That is very cool. So how did you go from just being a fan to getting into the wrestling business?
Well, that was another pretty funny story. Basically, I've been, I watched wrestling as a fan like right through the years. I used to do kickboxing and Muay Thai when I was younger. I fell in love with the most beautiful woman in the world. We started having a family. So I sort of had to give up the fight game, so to speak, and yeah, spent a few years just being a dad, which was great, and put on a whole bunch of pounds. And my doctor told me at one stage here I was morbidly obese and I had to do something about it. So I dropped all the weight, and because my wife's absolutely brilliant, she's very supportive on that side. So we did the journey together. We lost all the weight, and I started feeling really good about myself. And she said, "You should go back to doing, go back to Muay Thai." And at the time, I was 38, nearly 39, and I was like, "Yeah, don't know if I want to jump in the ring with these, young 16, 18-year-olds and stuff like that." Didn't know if the old dog could still hang. And she goes, "Well, you go to the wrestling shows, and you got mates that are in wrestling and stuff like that." She goes, "Why don't you give that a go?" So fast forward a little bit. I went to my first training at it was a place called NZWPW. It's the New Zealand wide pro wrestling, and trained with them for about 9 months, almost a year, and then made my in-ring debut the day before my 40th birthday. Went up against a guy called Axel. He was 6'4", and it was about 120 kg. So around 250, 260 pounds. And he proceeded to pull my t-shirt above my head, give me a whole bunch of welcome to the business chops, and then choked me out and threw me out in front of my family. And I was hooked ever after that.
So with that being said, what was your first thought when he gave you the first chop?
It was definitely okay. This is real. Yeah. Obviously, I'd received chops before, obviously in training and stuff like that. But getting that first one in the ring, it was just a different feeling about it. It was we did a school fundraiser for it was my son's we call it intermediate school, which is probably junior high for you guys. And I was a softball coach for his team because we were fundraising to get them off to a tournament. So we thought we'd put on a wrestling show. So it was a nice moment for us as well. So I had all my students and kids that I coached. They were all cheering me on and then laughing their backsides off watching coach get slapped around the ring. So it was very, very cool. And a moment that I will cherish because Axel was also a very good friend of mine. So it was nice to be in the ring with somebody you knew and you trusted, but he certainly wasn't holding it back.
So, what is with doing going into wrestling at a pretty late age? Were there any doubts that you could do it, or you just had that with your wife's encouragement? You just felt like this is going to be nothing. It's going to be easy, and this is a dream of mine.
Well, I certainly knew it wasn't going to be easy. Once you start taking a few back bumps and stuff like that, you realise that. But no, it was literally just a bucket list thing. That from that age of 11, I always wanted to do it, and but I'll give it a go. Thinking honestly that I'd probably have half a dozen matches and get the bug out of my system and away I go. But here I am. That basically in my 9th year. Later on this year will be I'll have my 10-year in the ring anniversary, I guess. yeah, so I didn't expect to be doing it for so long. But you play the cards you're dealt, and yeah.
So, how did it translate over from you now wrestling to the promotion? How did that happen?
Okay, so Martin Sterling, who was he was the owner of NZWW, he used to well, back in the late 70s, early 80s, he was a professional wrestler. He used to we had a program called On the Mat over here, which was NWA affiliated. Like we had Ric Flair come over here, and it was famously where Ric Flair lost the title over here to Harley Race, but never actually lost the title. But you know, it's a wrestling story. So Martin used to do that. He was getting very a bit long in the tooth. He was a bit he was getting on in age, and he decided he couldn't really commit to keeping WPW or NZWPW going. And at the time, we had a guy called Mitchell Fells. He's billed as New Zealand's biggest wrestling fan. Now, he's got muscular dystrophy, and we came up with a plan to try and send him over to WrestleMania. This is all going back 8 years ago. And so we had a big fundraiser, a show planned here in Wellington. Now, when Martin wanted to close down, it kind of put that show in jeopardy. So the boys all said to me, well, because I built one of the rings that we use, and they said, well, we've got a ring. You've got all the, you've planned everything. You've done everything. So let's still do the show. I'm like, well, you can't just put on a show. You got to have a promotion. So Capital Pro Wrestling was born because Wellington is the capital of New Zealand. So it kind of seemed appropriate. Plus, well, Vince's father, he used to have Capital Wrestling. He spelled it with an O. So it seemed really fitting. So yeah, we did that one show thinking, well, if we only do that one show, that's what we do. Be great. Yeah. And now 8 years later, we're still going strong. So
that is an amazing story. Is it hard to be the promoter and booker and still wrestle?
Yeah. It's at first we were just sort of trucking along nicely, doing a show every 2-3 months and just having fun. And that was, that was good. Then we actually started getting a pretty decent following, and wrestling in New Zealand for years has not many people has struggled because not many people know that wrestling's around. There's so many wrestling fans around the place. You'll see T-shirts all over the place. But you have conversations with people, that happen to be wearing a Bullet Club T-shirt or a Roman Reigns T-shirt or something like that, and you start talking about, you should come to one of our shows. And they're like, we didn't even know wrestling was around. Now, for a little country of 4 million people that we've got here in New Zealand, we've got about 14 wrestling promotions all around the country. To the point where pre-COVID, we were, there were guys that were wrestling every weekend, flying around to different parts of the country. There were always shows on. It's getting back to that, which is great. So when it was really easy to be a promoter / wrestler. It was great. We were just the boys hanging out, coming up with cool storylines, having fun. Once we sort of kicked into that next gear where we tried to think, well, we can actually make a business of this. Now, in my shoot job, I own a demolition company. So it's so I know business, and I was like, well, we could actually make a business of this. Not to the level where I can give up my day job and live in a big mansion, but we can, as long as it's sustainable, we're covering our costs. The wrestlers are getting paid. We're improving every show. So we thought we could do that. So that's been the problem. So I got myself a team of guys that helped me with the writing. My daughter Paris, she she's my little Stephanie, you could say. She runs the company with me. She does all of our filming. She's taking a bit of a break at the moment because she's gone over to the UK for the OE. So gone over there, spend a year over there enjoying life, which is fantastic. So yeah, we've just got a good team. And I made myself a simple rule that I don't book my own storylines. So I'm not one of these promoters that I've held every single title and I'm been champion for, undefeated for all these years.
And it's funny that you say that, because I was just about to ask you, how do you book yourself? But that's something very interesting, because out of what I know and the history that I've followed, and most promoters feel like they have to book themselves because they're the only person that they trust to be able to be there and do different things. With you taking that road, do you feel like that's what makes your product different? And not only different, it gives the fans a true wrestling appeal without your ego, so to say, in the way.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it, exactly it. Because like I say, I was 40 years old at my debut. I wasn't going to go out there and be The Rock. I certainly, I'm not, I'm not Rey Mysterio running around out there doing flips and everything like that. So I knew my role, and all I really wanted is, because just like most wrestling around the world, I would say would be the same. In New Zealand, we had a core bunch of veterans, and those veterans had a monopoly of most of the promotions around New Zealand, because a lot of them all worked together. So you had the same 10 guys wrestling each other for different belts all over the place. And what I wanted to do with CPW was to sort of almost be like NXT before NXT was NXT. I wanted to be the promotion that brought up all the new guys, the new exciting guys. And that's what we did for probably our first few years, that we just gave guys the opportunity to come and live their dream, have a go in the ring, see if they liked it, grow and improve. We ran seminars before every event. So we'd have like the guest headliner, and part of their booking package was they had the ability to run a seminar for the guys. So everyone was getting a chance to learn from different people, because geographically we're sort of mixed and matched, we're all over the place. So I just really literally, it sounds really cliche, but all I wanted to do was grow New Zealand wrestling. And I think now we've got to the point now where those guys that were our rookies and coming and having our first matches with us, well, they're now our veterans. And we've almost gone through a couple of cycles, a couple of generations of trainees that have come through, and now these guys that I gave the opportunity to, and when I say I mean CPW, they're now the big names in New Zealand professional wrestling, and getting shots. We've got a couple of guys that have we've got a New Japan dojo over here. And they've had tryouts with them, and some of them have actually gone over to do little mini excursions and stuff like that overseas, which is absolutely fantastic. So it was. I'd like to think that's what gave CPW the edge. Plus, I really, really wanted the backstage culture to be just a bunch of mates hanging out. I wanted that to be the fun part. That people would come to our shows, that the wrestlers would want to come to our shows to enjoy the backstage, enjoy the atmosphere, enjoy the family that CPW is. And then, hey, that 12 to 15 minutes they have in the ring, that's just a small price you pay for the fun. And I think that kind of that set me apart from a lot of people, and helped us grow. So, because if you're having fun out the back, it's going to show in the ring, and then the fans are going to have fun, and they all come back. So it's just I call it the cycle of life, right? So
And what I love about that, it's a simple concept, but it brings so much sustainability to your company and to your fans and the wrestlers. I think a lot of times people take wrestling, I don't want to say too serious because it's a serious sport, but it's they have the mindset it has to go ABC when you can go F, you can go E, you can go Q. There's so many different ways to build a wrestling culture, and I love hearing that and getting to know more about New Zealand wrestling is very cool. Now here's a big question that weighed on my mind when you agreed to do the show and everything. I was a big fan of the New Zealand sheep herders. I did not like them when they went to the WWE and they calmed them down and they became a gimmick.
The Bushwhackers,
Yes. So when y'all look at them, how do y'all praise what they've been able to accomplish in wrestling?
Well, I had the opportunity. We had Luke. We got Luke and Butch over. Butch before he passed away a couple of years ago was living in New Zealand. Luke's living in Florida. We managed to get them back for a show. I think it was probably about 5 years ago. So I had the opportunity to actually hang out with them for pretty much a week. It was great. Boyhood dream come true, right? Because I remember watching I remember distinctly the first time that I saw my first live wrestling show was back in 1991. They came over and they did a tour with they headlined with the Nasty Boys. The Nasty Boys were the tag team champions. Bushwhackers came over, and I remember Coco Beware came over. I remember the Genius came over, and I was just in awe because these guys you've seen on TV. And the cool thing about the Bushwhackers were they were from New Zealand. It was wow, they were like these guys that literally just grew up down the road are over in the States doing great things. So I fell in love with the Bushwhackers because I was younger in age, and the gimmick thing worked for me then. Then I got told once the wrestling magazines sort of became a little bit more popular in New Zealand, and I got a bit older and a bit mature, and I wanted to know more stuff about wrestling. I then discovered the sheep herders. So I did the fandom of their career in reverse. I loved the Bushwhackers for what they were, but then I discovered the sheep herders, and I'm like, oh my god, this is like. You're thinking Luke and Butch coming whoa down to the ring and stuff like that, and suddenly they're in blood matches and stuff. I'm just like, my god, yeah. And then I found out like more history about them because they are New Zealand wrestling royalty. And then I found out about how big the NWA and all that used to be over here. Like wrestling was huge in New Zealand back in the 70s and 80s. Andre the Giant was here very regularly, and the famous story about The Rock lived in Auckland in New Zealand for a year and a half because his father was over here wrestling. And it's just like, it blows my mind. So, Luke and Butch are still absolutely revered over here. We, one of the promoters that was at the time in Christchurch, we were putting on a bigger show. And we got them over for the show. And we did... There's three main centres in New Zealand, basically. There's Christchurch, which is down south. You got Wellington in the middle, and you got Auckland up the top. We managed to do little events in every single show, every single city, and everyone was coming out. You had fathers bringing their kids along and stuff like that. You had grandfathers with their sons and their sons. So you had three generations of people just goofing off because Luke and Butch were here. Which at the time, Butch's health wasn't very good. So it was really, really nice to be able to give him that sort of moment. Luke is Luke, and I believe Luke will probably be wrestling probably for another 100 years if he can help it. And definitely a character. But to give Butch something like that, and then for him to go over and get into the Hall of Fame and stuff like that, that was really, really cool as well. It was very sad that he passed away when he flew over for a series of events with Luke. The Bushworkers was doing like their farewell tour. But unfortunately there was a mix up with his medications. And he couldn't get the right medications over there, and he just got really sick and unfortunately passed away. But he passed away doing something that he loved. So yeah, it's a positive side of that.
Now, you brought up the NWA Ric Flair Harley Race title change that didn't happen but happened moment.
Yeah.
And you were also talking about how big the NWA was over there. One of the things that I'm a big Ric Flair fan and a huge NWA mark. That's what I grew up on as a child. So I still do a lot of research on that. With that being said, you were saying that the NWA was very huge there. With today's wrestling, does the WWE carry that same weight that the NWA did back in the days, do you think?
They certainly used to. Unfortunately, just because New Zealand's such a small country, I say 4 million people, they reckon there was a study done a few years back, and they reckon there was about we had Sky TV, which was the only place you could get WWE. This is pre-network and stuff like that, and Netflix. And they reckoned that Raw was watched by between 4,000 and 5,000 people per week. So it's a very small demographic. We used to get a lot of WWE coming over here. They'd come here pretty much every year. They'd come do an Australian tour and then pop over here. It was usually some random Tuesday night because, you save the cool nights for the big places. Fair enough. But we haven't had the WWE here since probably, I think it was about 2007, 2009 might have been the last one.
Jesus.
Wrestling's still big. People still love wrestling. We've seen a bit of a resurgence in New Zealand with just wrestling culture, and I think with the benefit of Netflix and everything like that, so everyone's been able to see it, because obviously when it was on Sky, it was a subscription based program, so not everybody had it, but pretty much everybody in the world's got Netflix, right? So brilliant marketing, brilliant idea for WWE to go to Netflix. And the good thing is part of our Netflix package, and all of my American friends hate me because of this, we get all the PLEs, and we get Raw and SmackDown, everything like that, all in the one place. It's great. So that's given us a bit of a resurgence, but it's just, unfortunately, we just don't have the population to support live wrestling over here, which is a shame, because every time they used to come here and do a show, they used to run seminars and trials for the wrestlers, and that's where people were getting picked up. Like I say, we've got New Japan. Good old Baydock Fale runs the dojo in Auckland. And so he's been training people for a few years. Absolutely lovely guy. He'll probably kill me for saying this, but he's the biggest teddy bear. And he will do anything for anybody that, if you're a good person, he'll love you to bits, right? Once that bell rings, run away from him. But he's been really, really good. They did a big show in Auckland, Secure Events, a few years back, and they had the likes of the Young Bucks there. Jay White made his return back home. to wrestle in front of us. And yeah, there was Godo came over and everything. It was absolutely brilliant. But it didn't draw the numbers that it warranted. So it was unfortunately a bit of a financial flop. It was the most amazing show I've ever been to live, sort of thing. But when unfortunately when the dollar's not there, it's not. We go right down the pecking order, which is where I see my role as a New Zealand indie promotion and all of our promotions. That's our role, to grow the scene, to make it so the WWE and New Japan, maybe even AEW, and that can come over and do it. Because if we can demonstrate that we've got a big enough fan base in New Zealand, then it becomes worth it. So.
Right, and it makes sense. But I think y'all sit in such a great opportunity, like you said, to help grow the fan base, and you can dictate your culture with being indie promotions, and can build and get eyes on y'all with having almost an exclusive market.
Yeah.
So tell me more about your company. What is the style of wrestling that y'all are most famous for?
Okay, so CPW, when it first started, I just wanted to focus on family-friendly entertainment. So basically, yeah, sort of maybe 90s wrestling, bit of attitude era, stuff like that. We don't do the death matches or anything like that. Yeah, we get a bit extreme at times, because I think that's just the nature of New Zealand, of wrestling in the world, to be honest. But recently we've been doing, we've actually been sort of branching out, because we noticed a big demand for, we call them R18 or adults only shows. Now, what that basically is basically a bar show, or we do beer festivals and stuff like that, where we get brought in as entertainment. So they'll have a band, and then they'll have us, and just to break it up, because like everyone loves wrestling. The amount of people that actually love wrestling, it's phenomenal. So we're sort of branching into a bit more than that, but our core values is just that family-friendly entertainment. Having the young kids come along with mum and dad and goof off. We've got some fans that used to bring their kids along. Now their kids, they used to hate, but they'd go along and take their kids. Mum and dad would. Now their kids grew out of wrestling, and they still come along to every show, because they're invested in the storylines. They know we've got a big Viking guy, Liam Erickson. They know he's cool, and they know that when he comes out, it means business. You've got myself. I wrestle as Jay Marshall. I was basically the last true superhero. Pretty much Hurricane Helms. So I was under no disbelief. I was the comedy relief. A couple of years ago, I made a heel turn and teamed up with one of my good friends, Ray Gunn, and we've joined the Gun Cabinet. Now we're the biggest protagonists you can imagine, and a lot of people come along to watch us get our butts kicked. And hey, someone's got to get their butt kicked, so you can get these other two guys up and over, right? So.
Right.
Yeah, so it's definitely a very, very family based, but I say when it's a promotion, you're trying to grow the scene, you've got to try all the different things, just to try and get your name out there. Like we do, similar to your guys' Comic Cons and stuff like that you do. We've got a thing called Armageddon that goes around different areas and around New Zealand. Now we've got the contract to do all of New Zealand, so. Oh, wow. We travel wherever they go, and put on wrestling shows there. So we'll do like a 45 minutes to an hour show. We might do that 2 or 3 times a day. just in between different panels and guests and stuff like that. Um, we we teamed up with a couple of good friends of ours, and we do. There's a suburb in Wellington here called Pairua, and we do it's called Pairua Rocks. So it's basically a heavy rock festival combined with a beer festival with wrestling. And it sounds like trouble, but it's not. We've never had a single bit of issue with it. But yeah, they've been going really, really, really well. We've been, you know, having huge numbers. We're having, you know, and when I say huge numbers for New Zealand, you know, having up to 2,000 people to these events, which is just fantastic. And the funny thing about those is we got some of New Zealand's best sort of heavier rock bands that got great followings and stuff like that. They'll sit there and play, and then instantly when the wrestling comes on straight afterwards, like the place just turns around. Now, being a beer festival, you think right in between bands, that's when the guys are going to go grab their beers and they're going to go have some food and stuff like that. But no, they stay there and they watch the wrestling. And in some cases, we actually have bigger crowds at the wrestling than we do at the bands. So, it's exciting times. It's just trying to figure out that secret sauce to tap into the market.
Right. Well, and I love hearing that y'all have different ways of getting your wrestling out there. I think that it's one of those things that we're getting back into the times where people have went away or now coming back. They're slowly coming back, and then you're building not only the newer fans with the families, but the fans that went away are coming back. So I think it's exciting times for wrestling now.
No, and that's exactly what we're saying, and it's really cool because like I have literally had like in my day job, right? So I meet with a lot of business owners and stuff like that that are doing demolition or they're expanding their offices or warehouses, whatever. And me being me, I wear a lot of hats, courtesy of going bald really, really early, and I have a lot of wrestling hats. It's just that's my secret passion. It's collecting. So the amount of times that I've gone to like a big business meeting and you take your hat off because you're sitting at a business table, you put it on the table, and they're like, "Oh, is that a Nasty Boys hat?" It's like, "Oh, that's a Ultimate Warrior. You just got the Ultimate Warrior face logo on it," and they're going, "Oh, it's a and so it gets recognised so often. So yeah, and sounding like a promoter now, these guys now have disposable incomes because they're at that stage of their life where they've been. So it's they're more likely to come and stuff like that. So it's good, and they want to give their kids that feeling that they had when they watched wrestling, when they saw Hulk Hogan coming out, when they saw the Bushwhackers coming out. Like I say, Coco Beware with Frankie. That was the coolest thing ever.
And what I love about wrestling and that is worldwide, that we like, I think us in the States a lot of time take it for granted. Okay, there's the WWE show, there's AEW, and not realizing how blessed we are versus what y'all have. Y'all may get a big show every few years, but it just still shows how powerful wrestling is, because no matter where you are, you can tell a wrestling fan, even if you don't speak the same language. We know each other. We give that look like, I know, hey, yeah. And it's such a great feeling, and to know that wrestling has that type of power. And especially with indies in particular, I'm a big believer in you can learn so much going through the indies. You get to go to different countries and
Yeah.
you can experience so much. You can test how well you have learned by seeing your style, that if you're, I don't know, a Southern wrestler and you come over to New Zealand, you want to see if that style works there. Then
Yep.
you have to learn how to change and how to morph where you can have the fans the way you want them, whether a good guy or a bad guy. But it gives you that polish that you need to become an international wrestling superstar.
Yep. Well, we're like, and that's the biggest problem with New Zealand, is because it's so geographically far away. We can't really get a regular rotation of overseas talent. Like, we'd love to have some of the indie guys and stuff like that come over, but it's just so financially restrictive. You know, when you're talking about the average crowd size of being 300 to 500 people at a show, trying to pay a few $1,000s to fly over, you know, someone from the States, that would be really, really beneficial for our guys to learn from, but it's just so cost prohibitive. And then when you try and, you know, like, you think, cool, we'll get them over for a couple of weeks, and then they can do a show in Auckland, they can come do a show in Wellington, and maybe we can try and squeeze a third one in. But it's just, yeah, obviously people can't take 2 to 3 weeks out of their time. It's not the traveling days of the old NWA are a bit different nowadays. It's in and out culture, right?
Yeah.
So we find that really hard. We've got he's a fellow promoter up in Auckland, Aaron Hanade. He's Hanade in New Japan, and he was part of the United Empire with old Jeff Cobb and a little fellow called Will Ospreay. And he's absolutely fantastic because he brings that overseas culture. And that overseas, he's currently over in New Japan now doing the tour. He's just come back from knee surgery. So he brings that professionalism back to New Zealand, which is really, really good. But he's teaching the guys. But because of where New Zealand wrestling is at the moment, there's quite a big disconnect. And so he's coming and going, we should be doing this, 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 and this. And he's not wrong. He is completely 100% correct. But he's talking at a level up here, and New Zealand wrestling's down here. So we need to get up there, but we need to get a bunch of people in to help us grow it up, because at the moment in New Zealand, we're all learning from each other. So you need that outside experience. To give you a bit of an example, one of my good friends, she owns the Christchurch promotion. Shout out to Unified Championship Wrestling. Now, I went down there at the end of last year for their Christmas show, and they had the debut of a guy from the States, a guy called Blade Lennox. I won't say which service he was in, but he was a military veteran from the States, and he actually lost the lower part of one of his legs. So he's got a blade for a leg, hence the name. And now I believe he had a little bit of success over there. wasn't storming the world or anything like that, but was just learning, and he was getting the name out there for himself. Just him coming over and just having conversations with him. It's just about, you go do some chain wrestling, and you lock up, you get somebody in an arm bar, you go, hammerlock, stuff like that, and he'd come in and go, try this, this, and this. And it's different things that we hadn't even thought of. A couple of the moves we didn't even know about, and just that different perspective than what we know and what we've been taught for years is refreshing. It's great. And then he saw us doing a whole bunch of stuff. So he's coming over to us going, hang on a minute, how did you do that? And we've explained to him. It's brilliant. And that's how wrestling grows everywhere, by different experiences from, people draw their knowledge from different places and different experiences. And then you just, it's all melted together and come up with your own style. So that's our biggest issue at the moment is just, we'd love to be able to get people over to get different different styles and different flavors of ice cream, you could say.
Right.
Mm.
One thing that here in the States has started happening again is the revival of the NWA, and they do have territories.
Yep.
I'm actually lucky that I'm surrounded by two different NWA territories that are, I would say, maybe 30 to 40 miles apart, that they share talent, and they have big names come in and everything. If you had an opportunity to link up with the NWA and Billy Corgan, would that be something that you would think about doing?
Yeah, I think something like that would be brilliant. I think you hear the stories about the old territory days and stuff like that, and because that was when the New Zealand was big. Obviously, it had Jim Barnett that was running. He was running in Australia. So because Australia and New Zealand are so close, like we get most of our overseas talent from Australia because it's literally a 2 to 3 hour flight. It's actually, in some cases, it's cheaper to fly to Australia than it is to fly from different places around New Zealand. So it's a bit ridiculous. We're a little bit backwards. But something like that would be absolutely amazing. Because it was similar in New Zealand, that when I first started, there were basically each promotion was their own little mini territory. And at one stage there, it was like, no, you cannot go wrestle for them because you're ours. And so you had all these fantastically talented wrestlers around New Zealand that never got to touch because they weren't allowed to associate with them. It was yeah. It wasn't conducive for anybody. No, nothing was growing. And it was like when I was saying about the Mitchell Mania show, or the show we did for Mitchell Phelps when CPW started. That was the first one in years that we had 11 promotions on that show, and they all worked together. The coolest thing about that show was no one got paid any trans, no one got paid any match fees, nothing. Every single cent that came through the door was donated to Mitchell. I managed to get sponsorship for everything else. That the venue was covered, the lighting that we had, the additional lighting we had to hire, everything was covered. So literally every ticket sold went to Mitchell. And we ended up sending him over there for, not just because of that, there was shows all around New Zealand and there was a big fundraiser things. But yeah, we sent him over there, which is absolutely great. But that opened a lot of doors because it got the companies talking to each other. And then you got to see the matches of these great veterans. Like we've got a guy, James Shaw. He's absolutely phenomenal. He does it's a bit of a preacher gimmick. He's a divine savior. The world's biggest heel that everybody just wants to see beaten up. He was when I got into wrestling into New Zealand, he was one of my idols because he's extremely funny. He's technically brilliant wrestler, but doesn't show it off because he's the funny guy and he's the bad guy. Right. But you got to see him against some other people. And we had at the time we've got another place right down the other end of the country in Invercargill called SVW, and they had it amazing there. Everybody talks about the team that came that year that came from OVW that had the Brock Lesnar and Randy and Shelton Benjamin and John Cena. Well, SVW had a year like that where they had there was a guy J.K. Moody and a guy Kane, K9 now, he was Kane Khan at the time, and they had about 4 guys that came out of there that were just absolutely phenomenal. They've all gone off to like the Deadly Sins, which are Moody and K9. They went over to England and wrestled there for a couple of years. And they were just absolutely amazing. So those guys got introduced into our mix. And that's how you grow, by just working with everybody. We've got another guy that's overseas, Niwa. he was from NZWW back in the day. He went over there, and he's still over in the UK, and he does the holiday camp series and stuff like that. And he's wrestled all over the world, and he's absolutely brilliant. He came back for a year or so over here, and the knowledge he brought back was brilliant. So, yeah, like I say, if we had the opportunity to sort of link up with like an NWA or something like that, it would be amazing. But again, it's just that geographical roadblock that we have. So,
Well, and I definitely understand exactly what you mean. I think though there are ways you can make it work without necessarily having to fly people in all the time. Like I'm sitting here listening and thinking to myself, I'm like, how about doing a virtual training session?
yeah,
And and then maybe instead of just being able to fly one guy out, maybe you get a group of guys and girls and make it a tour, and they can come over for 2 to 3 weeks and be able to set a tour, plus do a seminar, and y'all can learn from each other. I think and with a lot of promotions and indie promotions in particular, I think that you all could work together to make things like that happen. But the biggest thing is to reaching out and be willing to work with other companies. Unfortunately, you still have some people with the mindset, "Oh, you're not taking my talent," and that. And I really feel it's sad because the times we are in now, as especially the indie market, you could do so much more and make a big splash where people who can't, just be honest, can't afford WWE and the bigger shows can really get into and enjoy a combination of indie promotions working together.
Yeah. So we've got some friends that we deal with different promotions in Australia. MCW, where Bronson Reed came from, and Rhea and all them. So we work with. When I say work, we've had some guys go over there with them, and they've had some come over here. We've got probably about 4 or 5 other promotions around, all Star Pro Wrestling and stuff like that, all around Australia. So we are trying to look at doing something like that, where between all of us, we could probably get a couple of 3 people over, do a tour and stuff like that. And it just gets to the point where, yes, it costs you financially to do that, but the reward of the growth from the wrestlers and your talent, the learning and the experience that they're going to gain, that's better than a financial outlay, right? So it's a lovely concept to have, but you just got to have that financial outlay in the first place. So it's a building thing, and we're looking at ways that we can do it. And you know, we've looked at the virtual seminar stuff. We've done a few of them, which are really, really good, especially when you get around the psychology. Because the big thing for me is I love the storytelling. I love the psychology. That's wrestling to me. The moves are cool, and you can learn the moves, you can practice the moves, but it's the psychology, it's the mannerisms before them, it's the little bits in between the moves, you know.
Right.
And so that type of stuff, we've been doing a lot of web seminars and stuff like that with those. even just ones within New Zealand. You know, we'll jump online and we'll just literally, you know, we'll have a plan and what we're going to discuss, but it ends up just turning out to be a sort of just a shooting the breeze thing, and we're all just bouncing off each other, and then we get some really cool stuff out of that. So yeah, there's definitely some value and stuff like that too. So, and we got technology. It's a world of technology, right? We might as well use it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I want to thank you so very much for coming on my show and enlightening my audience and myself on the wrestling over where you are. I'm a big believer in giving people their flowers and their just due, because I feel like when those are given, they're mostly given after a person has passed away and can't hear it or enjoy them.
Yep.
So I want to give you yours because you are doing something so tremendous, and it is something that is very passionate to me also, because I've been a lifelong wrestling fan. And and the one thing that, since I started podcasting and getting into this side of wrestling, is I'm a true believer in leaving the business better than I found it. And I
Exactly.
want to, like I said, give knowledge, of help people, and any different thing, again, to just make the business better. And I want to give you your flowers for everything you're doing for New Zealand wrestling, for wrestling in general. And it is an amazing thing. And anytime you need anything from me, I'm just a message away. Anything I could do, my company can do, we will be glad to help. So thank you so
No,
very much.
no. Thank you, and thank you very much for the kind words. I'd like to, yeah, I take that to my heart. It's really, really awesome. But honestly, I'm just a small cog in the wheel. I don't proclaim myself to be the promoter of CPW. I'm just a guy with a ring, and it's a big team effort. And I think that's where you get the real success when everybody just tries to work together. So, yeah, I'll be giving those flowers out to the rest of my team. Put it that way as well.
Yep.
So they,
Thank you. Thank you. Guys, girls,
yeah.
thank you so much for joining me around the campfire for another amazing story. Again, I believe as wrestling fans, we sometimes don't realize how big the sport we love is actually a worldwide phenomenon. And it's so refreshing to learn that there are other countries, other places that do the same thing and promote the same love and level of just greatness that we all love to see and know. Um, Before I go, I always love to give this message, and I find this most appropriate now. No matter where you are, there is an indie promotion near you. Go and support that promotion. It is an amazing thing. You will be amazed on the talent you see there, what they put into that promotion, the heart and soul of, honestly, for me, professional wrestling. And they need our support, and they love to hear how much they mean. And you get to talk to the wrestlers and learn about them. And there's so much, it's a different field than any bigger promotion show you will go to. So please, please, please support your local promotion. With that being said, I'm Professor Burr. This has been a Burr's Thought. We'll see you around the campfire very, very soon. Y'all take care.